Coming home. I don't know how many of you do the daily Bible reading in the back, that Ron started putting out, but also there is by the same church they do what's called a jump start, and it is a kind of a comes out Monday through Friday, and it's just a quick study of usually a verse, a couple of verses. It's done by Roger Schaus. He's one of the preachers there, and this was one last week, and it kind of played out Sunday afternoon. It made me think. So I thought, you know what, that's going to be my topic on Wednesday night. So after I left church here, I went to Publix, and so did everybody else. And when I got there and I saw a spot open up very close, and I thought, oh, fantastic. And so I pulled on up there where there was these two ladies, and they had a cart, and they looked very irritated. And I was waiting, but they left their cart in front of the parking spot, so I couldn't pull in. So I was just kind of blocking traffic behind me. So, you know, um, and in certain situations, a lot of times that it's frustrating. There's no doubt about it. And she was doing it on purpose. Kind of gave me the look. And I sat there patiently and pulled in, and I thought, I've got a choice to make here. What am I going to do? So I jumped out of the car, and she was unloading her basket, and there was a couple of cases of water. So I grabbed one of those cases of water and I set it in her car for her. And when she got that buggy empty, I said, "I'll take that for you." And I said, "Have a good day." And I know she looked at me and she goes, "Well, thank you." But you know, you have to think. You don't know what kind of situation she was dealing with. I don't. I don't claim to know, but I know what I could do in that situation. I think in some days you might not catch me in that mood. Some days I might not be the friendliest person if I'm in a hurry, if I need to get there, if I need to do something else is on my mind. There was a one of the jump starts last week was shine your light, and it's Matthew 5:16. It says, "Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." So, my idea or Roger's idea, and this is partly his and partly mine, was, can people tell that I'm a Christian? She may not be able to tell I was a Christian. Of course, I was dressed in church clothes, and it was church time. So you could make that assumption, I guess. But you would probably make that assumption based more upon behavior as opposed to how somebody is dressed. And I start thinking, outside of church, you know, would anybody know? Can people make the conclusion based upon your spirit or your attitude or your choice of words or your kindness? That you are a Christian. Based upon how you live, how you treat others. Um, when you're at a restaurant or when you're shopping in your crowd, are you kind? Or are you troublesome? Do you have a mean look on your face? Do you act like you know life is terrible? Is that what you can do? Or what about your neighbors? Can they draw the conclusion that you're a Christian? Do you help them? Do you help them when you have the opportunity to do so? So can they draw that conclusion based upon how you're living? And in Matthew 5:6, and it points to things that we do. It says that they may see your good works. And that is what the world is going to see. They're not going to see what I do in this building unless they're here. So, there's probably, I don't know, there might be 60 people that know that I get up here in the pulpit. There's not many, in the whole scope of things. And a lot of them may know some of those people may know I'm up here, but they've probably never seen me up here. So do they really know? They don't really see what goes on in this building. They don't see um, the good works that we work on and doing in here, and those good works that we do out in public, let us. That's letting your light shine. That's the opportunity to let your light shine, and it's others that need to see that. And I thought this also. People can't see your prayers and your thoughts. And I started thinking while Ron was talking this evening, and I wonder if the leaders of this country realize that there's people praying for them, because we pray for them probably every week. I wonder if they have any idea that we're praying for them, or praying for those that we support, or praying, some of our family members. Do they realize that we're praying for them? Because you can't see those prayers. They don't see what we're doing. So we have to have some sort of activity that shows that we are a disciple of Christ. And those things have to be seen, because they can't see our prayers. They can't see our thoughts. They can't see our love for them. They can't see those things. So we have to do something outward so they can realize that. For people to see those good works, and we have to be where the people are. It's not just in this church building or in our homes. We have to present us as being Christians out in the community. That's what we have to do. And for others to glorify God, they have to see what we do. They have to make that realization that we're different, that we're set apart, and then glory can be given to God. It's not our glory. We're doing what's right in most situations, not doing it for any praise. We're doing following Christ as an example. It can't be hidden, and it can't be just for fellow Christians. We can't just do it in here. We can't just do it around our families. So Roger had 3 different points to make about shining that light. Number 1 was doing good for others may catch their attention long before what you believe does. So that may be your end. They're probably going to realize that you're a nice person because you keep helping them long before they even ask you, do you go to church? Are you a Christian? So you may have to do several things. It might not be just one thing. It might be one thing, and someone says, "You know what? You're a nice guy. Are you a Christian? Do you go somewhere? Maybe I'd like to visit." What a fantastic situation that would be. It doesn't happen very often, I would say. But what about helping a neighbor? Or what about being productive at work with a good attitude, or going out of your way to assist others when you don't necessarily have to? Those opportunities. Let your light shine out there in the public. And in our culture, which is, to some extent very selfish, that light's going to stick out. That's going to make a difference. People are going to notice that you either have a good, you know, you're in a good mood at work. You don't mind doing the work. You can help them. You guide them. You praise them. You can do those things, and especially doing things that aren't required of you. If you go out of your way, going out of your way is a big thing. And I think anytime I've ever done that, it's always benefited me more, I think, than someone else. You're gonna get that extra star in your crown for doing that, doing something you don't necessarily have to do, doing something because you want to do it, something that you can make someone's life better. It's the light shining that is noticed. That's what people are going to see. It's those works that you're going to do. Christianity needs to be presented as something that's appealing, not something that's a drag. If we're walking around, "Oh, I got to go to church tonight," or something's going on there, or, "Oh, I don't want to do that," or I'd rather not be with those people. I'd rather just sit at home. That's not appealing, right? You know, Everybody knows where I'm going to be Sundays and Wednesdays. It's not a question. And I want to be here. I need to be here. It is a benefit to me, and I hope it's a benefit to others. We need to be here, edifying one another, encouraging one another, because we are trying to get to heaven. And in 1 Peter 3:15 it says, "But sanctify the Lord God in your hearts, and always be ready to give a defense to everyone who asks you a reason for the hope that is in you, the meekness and fear." So the hope, they need to see that there's a hope in us. A lot of people don't realize that there's something better than this. And I'm going to tell you, if this is all there was in this world, and like I say, I've had a fantastic life, but it would still be discouraging. And I'm glad there is something better. There is a hope for us, and we need to share that hope with others. We don't need to be presenting, our lives as negative. We need to be positive, shining the light and encouraging. And that hope should be noticed. The first step in teaching someone about Christianity may not be, hey, what are you doing this Sunday? You want to go to church? That might not be the first step. It might be shining your light. People are going to notice that, and maybe they want to be like you. Maybe they want to be with you. Maybe they see how you're different. You come on, strong. I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm not saying don't do it. But if you kind of come on strong and say, hey, what are you doing? Let's go to church. Some people find that off-putting. They definitely do. So the first step might be shining your light, getting them on your side, make them interested in you, make them interested in how you live and your attitude. Number 2 is let your light shine in such a way. He said that there was porch lights attract a lot of bugs, and I've got a dusk to dawn light out in front of my garage, and I don't know, about 2 weeks ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago, but for about 2 weeks, these big crunchy bugs, just hundreds of them, dead under the light, crawling under the garage door. I'm sweeping them out, and it's every morning, and now they're gone. So they were just doing their thing. But that light attracts a lot of bugs, but it's also lights the path. It does several functions, and we have to realize that a lot of people aren't serious about their lives. A lot of people aren't serious about saving their soul. They just don't take it serious. I don't think they realize what's really going to happen that final day. And it is scary. There's no doubt about it. But it's not scary if you're prepared. A lot of those bugs just might hang around you because you keep helping them out, cutting the grass or come over to help or dig a ditch or whatever like that. And they just, they're going to benefit from your light shining, and they're never going to make the correlation. They're never going to be interested in their life. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, because you got to keep shining your light, because you never know. You never know. So you may have to deal with those bugs fluttering around, but you got to keep the light shining. You can't put the light out. Others benefit from that light. They will see, those around you will see how a marriage and how a family should function, how it should be involved in worshiping the Lord, studying His Word. How because we all have Christ in our life. How you push through a crisis. Do you just fold? Do you just fall apart? No. Christians, we have someone to pray to, someone who's going to help us through those hardships. How to handle death of loved ones. Do you just blame God? Is that all you do? Or think, I need to be prepared because it's going to happen to me. That's where your interest needs to be, and that's where your effort needs to be. And they'll see how you treat others. And you can't turn that light off because there's bugs. You can't do it, because you don't know how many people are dependent on that light. You never know who you're touching. You don't have any idea. Just by the way you live. And it may not be now, it may not be next year, it might not be 10 years from now, but maybe you touched someone and it got them to thinking. And maybe it took them 10 years to come to Christ. And hopefully, with God being long suffering, maybe they had the time to come to Him. You don't know. So you can't turn your light out. You got to keep shining. Number 3 is don't misuse the light. Shining in other people's eyes is not the way to give glory to God. We shouldn't be seeking praise. That shouldn't be our job. It should be, that we are out there doing the right thing. It's not that I did something good, I need to be noticed, put me in the newsletter. He did this that day for this guy. It's not important. It is important to me. I'm benefiting from it, but you don't need praise for it. Helping others and doing good for all, not just picking and choosing, not just helping people in here. And that was my choice Sunday. I had a couple of things I could have done. I could have just got out of my truck and walked in. But I made the choice not to. And that's what we all need to be doing. All that needs to point to God and not yourself. And in John 12, 42 and 43, it says, nevertheless, even among the rulers, many believed in Him But because of the Pharisees, they did not confess him, lest they be put out of the synagogue, for they love the praise of men more than the praise of God. We don't need the praise of men. It means nothing. It means nothing. We need to be doing what's right in God's eyes. That's what we need to be doing. So let your light shine. You know, it's one of the many ways to let others know that you follow Christ. There's a lot of ways you can do it, but that's one way, and it's an easy way. And I'm going to tell you that opportunity presents itself every day by how you speak and how you act and how you talk and how you present yourself. You can present that every day. So I'll end just like I began. Can people tell you're a Christian? Can they tell you're a Christian? They should be able to. If anyone is in need of the invitation this evening, there's something we can do or say for you. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Now's an opportunity, and you don't know if you're going to have another opportunity. Please stand and come forward while we stand and sing the song selected.
Oh, blessed Lord.